Harry, obviously you had success in Wales.
Yeah.
At the time before you came to Hartlepool, was there any other clubs that you were sort of speaking to or were interested in taking to you, or was anyone else mentioned?
Yeah, there was 3 or 4 clubs that were, that I'd got the final stages with, and it just hadn't felt right, or it hadn't been right. Whether that was the club. There was a couple that were quite big clubs in the conference, but one of them didn't really have any long-term plan of going full-time and staying full-time. They wanted to be on a part-time basis, which I didn't really. I was happy at a full-time club in Wales. At TNS, every player and every member of staff was full-time. I didn't want to go backwards from a point of view of my job position as being in full-time football, to go and, I'd been there for 7 years of doing that. I didn't want to go backwards. If I could, to go into a Tuesday and Thursday night, or a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, it was something I worked really hard for, from a coach's point of view, doing all my badges, put my hours in from a lower level to get to the point where I was a full-time coach manager. So, there was 1 or 2 clubs, Gateshead was one of them, Halifax was another one, where at points it was very close, and it just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't really work out, and it didn't happen. Halifax on 2 or 3 occasions was very close. I get on really well with the chairman, he's a great guy, but and there was other clubs as well. But I think with the Hartlepool thing, I think the heart ruling the head a little bit as well, with the area the region. It is where I was brought up, where I played my football, where my parents live, where my family, extended family live, where my friends live, and I just thought, it was one of them that, and being a massive club that had just been relegated out of the Football League, what better could you get from a first time job, moving out of Wales into the English system, to being a everything but status, being a Football League club.
I remember you talk about the nerves of speaking to the team for the first time. I suppose the press officer point of view, it might be the nerves of speaking to the new manager for the first time. And I remember ringing Craig, and you were driving somewhere, whether you were driving to Hartlepool, I can't remember, Craig, but the overall feeling and memory I've got about it is just how excited you were. I could just tell from speaking to you that very first time, you were just so looking forward to getting your teeth into it, weren't you?
Yeah, no, I was, and like I said, fortunately, I've got a very, very understanding partner. But at the time, I'd said yes before we'd even agreed. It was one of them that she knew. Obviously, I'd went for the interview. She knew that I'd been offered the job, but she didn't quite know that I'd already said yes before we'd talk about the moving, the relocating, all the rest of it. That was me being my psyche again of, I've worked very, very hard for this, and I've put a lot of time and effort in, and it's something that, from a personal point of view, I was quite selfish with, and I was like, I'll do anything that makes it work, whatever you need to do, and I'm very, very fortunate I never had to choose, because there would have been no choice. I'm only joking, Danielle. You listen to this, there would have been no choice. I would have got up and went anyway. And she would have.
But you did.
She's just shouting, by the way. She's listening to that. She's just shouting. She's heard that. So, yeah.
Simo, you can cut that bit out.
But no, you did. You threw yourself. But like you said, you moved full kit and caboodle to the northeast. I remember that, the first couple of weeks of the season, you threw a big barbecue, didn't you, for the staff and everyone, to try and galvanise, because you were probably aware that the club was a little bit on its knees after relegation, and you wanted to do everything you could to give both the club and yourself the best chance you could.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, it was a fantastic opportunity, and still now, everything but they're a Football League club. Without a shadow of a doubt, they've got a huge following.
Don't know about now, Craig. Don't know about now.
I still think now that they're a huge club in that league, and it was something that like I said, it was almost like a bit of, not redemption, but I don't know the best way to describe it. What is, the thing that drove me, and still does drive us now, I've not given up on being a manager, far from it. I really enjoy my job at the moment, but I've just turned 42, and I've been a manager stroke coach for 12 years with a pro license, being involved with 15, 16 Champions League games, 6 Europa League games, and being a full-time manager stroke coach for 12 years. Just turned 42, so I'm far from giving up. I'm just on a different pathway at this moment in time. But it's something that still now drives us every day, that injustice of me having to retire 25, 26-year-old. I don't think that was fair, and I still don't think that was fair. And the only way that I'll put that to bed is when I become a successful coach, or as successful as I can, coach, manager as I can. And that's what drives me every day, because I just don't feel in me as a person, I'm not going to lie down and stand and put up with that. That was me. It happened for a reason, and the reason is I'm going to be a more successful coach or manager.
So at Hartlepool, going back to when you take the job, what kind of vision was sold to you by the people at Hartlepool, and how quickly did you start to suspect that it wasn't quite as it had seemed?
Yeah, look, it went from the interview. The interview went really well. I think on the interview there was Pam Duxbury, Paul Watson, and John Blackledge. Yeah, we're in the interview panel. It was at the Tickle Trout in Preston, just off the M6, and it went really well. To the point of where, before I got home, they'd near enough offered me the job. It was one of them situations. Everything that went well could have went well. We hit off, everything. We're talking about budgets, we're talking about expectations, we're talking about ambition, the club's ambition, and it was from day one what I was told, that to get back into the Football League ASAP, and that's the way it was, and that was great, because that's what I wanted to do. I couldn't have thought of anything better to start my first job in England, is to get a team like Hartlepool back into the Football League, because I think it's probably easier to stay in the Football League than get promoted into the Football League from the conference. So that was always my state of mind. Getting promoted out the conference was always going to be a harder task than staying in the Football League. Whether the wide public think that or not, I don't really care. It's what I think, and I still think it now. Because there's only 2 clubs go up, and there's only 2 clubs go down. So, statistically, it's easier to stay in that league more than any, but there's the least that get relegated. So that was always my thought, that we need to get promoted. Whether that was the right thing or wrong thing, I think probably looking back was probably the wrong thing. But I don't think I could have come into the club and just been, it'd be massive if we got into the playoffs. We just need to have a bit of stability. We need to do this, we need to do that. We're playing in a different league. We need to get used to it. Everyone needs to get used to a new start. It just would have been PR suicide from my point of view. But looking back, with being wiser and being older, possibly, and looking back where Hartlepool are now, without being disrespectful, I don't think they're any further forward than what they were when I left, apart from a bit more stability off the pitch.
Craig, obviously I remember texting you at the time when you got the job, and I don't know I don't know any of the people there at the time that were running the show. When you went in, did you have a lot of signings to make? Did you change a lot of the players? Were there a lot of players under contract that had come out of the league? Was that a difficult situation to handle?
Yeah, it was, because basically it was sort of, there was a group of players that I was told that would not be signing. So I'd have to go and find some players. There'd be other players that were recommended by agents. Paul Watson's job at that moment in time was recruitment, so he would be looking to bring players in. It was a bit of a change from my point of view, because I'd in part of the interview process was that I'd literally done everything at TNS, to the point that I'd negotiated contracts with players, how much players were getting paid. Because I knew if I had a budget, that if I wanted them that much, I would take from someone else to bring that one in.
Yeah.
And Paul Watson dealt with that. I didn't know how much players were getting paid. Paul dealt with that. Paul brought players in, as in through the agency, through his contacts as well. And it took a little bit of time me getting used to that. I'm not saying I wasn't in complete control, but it was a lot less control than what I'd been used to. Like I said, there was players that were told were getting too much money or were too old that couldn't sign back. There was players that I was told they'd want to get rid of. There was members of staff that I was told had to go, and it didn't matter what I said. And then to rebuild in a short space of time, then yes, I'm not putting 100% blame on anybody else. I've got as we've moved on to the Hartlepool situation, there's one thing that I am is honest, and I made mistakes, Mickey. Simo, I made mistakes. I'm a young manager, and I put my hands up to it. And there's some signings that didn't work out. There's some signings that got pushed upon us. There's some signings I made that I didn't get right. In recruitment's huge, I know that. But there's also 4 or 5 signings that I thought were good, very good signings at the time, and got to some point. But by the by, I didn't really have the control. That was spoke about in the interview. Yeah. Within the day I started the job, the day I started, basically the day I said yes, there was a list of players that I had to get rid of that weren't getting retained, even though I wanted to. And then there was a high profile member of staff that I was told that I couldn't keep whether I wanted to or not.
So how do you manage that, Craig? If someone says to you, he's a player that we want you to sign, or that is signing for the club, and you're not in control of that, how does it undermine you as a manager, or do you just think, well, I've got to get on with it? Or
I don't think it undermines you, because that we had a recruitment person in there for a reason. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like you'd still say, right, I need X, Y, and Z, and I need to find these, or I need to do this, or I need to do that, or I need to do that. In sometimes. So
you had some say in it, but not.
Yeah. So some say with 80%. Well, I had some say with 80% of it. So it was probably.
Were there some players that just landed and that you're having these, you're signing them?
Well, not in so many terms, but I'm not going to name them, because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair on the people involved, because it wasn't their fault. But there was that. It wasn't like that. There wasn't like some of the stories you hear that they turn up on the training pitch and you don't know who they are. But should I say there was players that were strongly pushed towards my direction, and maybe as my first big job, do I say no? Do I spit me dummy out? Do I cause a massive scene? You've got to weigh up the pros and cons. Should I have been probably stronger? Possibly. But we've got to remember, this is like 7-8 years of work that I'd done of getting myself an opportunity. And I thought I could have worked around it. I thought I could have done enough to play a little bit of lip service, but also as well as still it's something that I think I'm really quite good at. I thought I was quite good at is picking me battles wisely and knowing when to do it. I had a tough chairman at TNS, but me and Mike Harris got on really well. But again, I would pick me battles. If the people that own a football club and put money into it want to feel like they've had a couple of wins every now and then, but at the time you think it's no huge significance to me, and I can move on and I eventually get what I really, really want, then I think it's modern day football. Sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah.
And that first month was quite tough, wasn't it? It was a bit of an incarnation of fire in the National League from the opening day.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a grind, wasn't it, for the first 3 or 4 weeks? That bank holiday weekend changed everything, didn't it? Right at the end of August, the win at Guiseley, and then we had some brilliant wins. The Solihull game, and Orient away, I think we won. And to be honest, Craig, the spirit at the time then behind the scenes, you know, on a Friday night in the hotel, a bit of laugh amongst the staff and everything. The spirit was building, and it was probably as good as it's been that I can remember, you know, at that time.
No, I agree. I think it was. The first month was hard. It was really hard. Coming to a new job, you're trying to get where you want to play. Possibly had to change the way I really wanted to play. That was just as much as down to me as much as anything else. Possibly should have been a bit more efficient, shall we say, earlier on. Wanted to play possibly more football than what probably was needed to get out that league. And I think, it took a month or so for everyone to bed in. It took a month or so for the players to know what I wanted, not just on a training pitch or pre-season, but in a game.
You've got that relegation hangover as well, haven't you? You've got players that are being relegated, and that has a big effect on the next season as well, I think. Yeah. I remember the time we got relegated, and it's like a hangover for months and months and months after of disappointment. So you've got that to deal with as well as coming to a new club and new principles and philosophies, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a lot of juggling going on at the time, and obviously, we were close and more, worked closely together, and I think you would see how much effort I was putting in and how much work I was putting in to try and get, but that doesn't just happen overnight. Like I referred to earlier, if you get 18 months, 2 years down the line, things aren't going well, and I think you've got to be looking at something's going wrong here, but 9-10 months down the line, in circumstance as well, but we were building, we're building day on day in training, week on week. I was finding out a lot more about players that I didn't know about from a personal point of view, who I could rely on, who I couldn't, which you only really know until you work with them. It's fine seeing players play in different teams. It's fine doing all your due diligence, as in seeing the player, he's a good player, these are his physical attributes. But when the chips are down, how are these players going to react? And there's a few players let me down, I thought. A few players let the club down, a few players let themselves down. But that was never going to be known until you get into the cooker pressure of a demanding football club that had just been relegated in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 fans sometimes, that at home there was no hiding place. There was no place to go into a shell. You got to take responsibility. You've got to go and play football. You've got to go and do this. You've got to go and want the ball. You've got to be prepared to make a mistake. And you've got to, put your balls on the line and trust yourself, and the trust that the manager and the coaching staff have got in you to go out there and do it. And there was probably 3, 4, maybe 5 out of a 20 group squad that I possibly found out quite quickly that they weren't going to do that. And then you move on from then, and subsequently then you make your mistakes and you learn from that, and as a manager you got to learn quickly. And then I think we went on a run of 12 unbeaten games, and we won 8 or 9 of them, Simo, I think it was.
Yeah, through October and into November, to be fair. It's difficult because I'm looking back and trying to remember with detail when things happened, but there was cracks starting to appear, and I presume, without wanting to put words in your mouth, you probably noticed those perhaps a little bit earlier than others in the club at the time.
Yeah, without a doubt. I remember this is where I knew things were really going to start going badly. It was November, Halifax at home, won 4-0.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So by that time, we'd got, I think we'd played 15 games. I think we'd won 9, drew 3, and got beat a couple. So I think we're in a real good run of form. I think we were probably 6 or 7 points from playoffs. Considering we started badly, we didn't get a win for 4 or 5 games, and our momentum was starting to build. We were really starting to, we just beat Halifax at home 4-0. At the Vic, it was fantastic, decent crowd, and I remember Palm Duxbury at the time coming to speak to me and saying, Craig, can I speak to you after the game, when you finished with the coaches after the game, recapping or speaking to the players as soon as we got off the pitch. By that time, I wasn't fearing for my job by that time, because we're in a good position. We're 1 or 2 wins away from getting in the playoffs.
Yeah.
In the conference, it's a week, isn't it? Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, all of a sudden you're in the playoffs, 9 points, a good week, and you're there or you're thereabouts. So you don't agree with us, Mickey?
He's getting an extra lighting on the situation.
It's getting tense now, Mickey.
I know, I'm getting interested now.
This is it now.
So it's got to that point. We've just beat Halifax at home, 4-0. Good performance. When was the last time, Hartlepool won 4-0 at home? Convincing performance. Everyone's going away happy. Like I said, come in. Pam said to me, "Can I speak to you, Craig, after you've addressed the team?" And yeah, no problem. So we're there. There was still a few coaches about by that time. I think Jenks and Batesy might have still been about. And Pam just said to us, I need to speak to you one-on-one. Can I speak to you tomorrow? Are you in tomorrow? I was yeah, fine. Players are off. I'll make sure I'm in the training ground. I'd be in anyway. As you know, Simo, didn't have many days off. Come in to prepare for the next game. Match analysis, look over the team we're playing against. So got in and basically just sat down with Pam. Pam just said, John's pulled out completely. He's not paying no penny. He's not paying another bill. He's not paying an electric bill. He's not paying a wage. He's not paying anything. He's pulled out completely. He is not spending another penny at this football club. And that was the back end of November. And that was the Wednesday before we're just about to getting paid last Friday of the month. And that was then when she said, "That's it, Craig. He's not paying anyone. The lads aren't getting paid on Friday."
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the time, and well, not at that time, but later on, I was told by one senior member of the team that he'd been told by Paul Watson that the ship was going to hit the fan and that they might not get paid. And to be honest, it wasn't rocket science then looking back and looking at the results and the way they fell off a cliff at a point when the players then obviously found out that there was a chance that they weren't going to get paid. It's not.
I'll never be one to duck things or make excuses, but we were in a good run.
Yeah.
The facts speak. We're good run. If you go back in I don't know, you might know some, or you might get onto your stats and have a look, and it'd be interesting to see where we were after that win against Halifax. And I would imagine we were probably no more than 4 or 5 points away from playoffs, maybe 6.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know it was the last win for a while.
Yeah, in strange enough, the curse of the manager of the month. and then so then I'm speaking with Pam, and then the lads are supposed to be getting paid on the Friday, so the lads are off on the Wednesday. I'm hoping that it's just a blip and John is, for whatever reason, I don't know what's happened, so I've tried to get hold of John. I had a direct line to him, couldn't get hold of him on numerous occasions. Spoke to Pam, and Pam was still on the on the Wednesday night. Look, Craig, we're going to have to bring the players in tomorrow, and we're going to have to tell them they won't be getting paid on Friday. And we don't know when they'll be getting paid, and we don't know for the foreseeable future what will be happening. So we need to let the lads know as soon as possible. So we'll get everyone in at Durham in the canteen, and we'll let everyone know that they're not going to get paid on that Friday. And they didn't get paid on that Friday. They got paid a week or two later, I think, the first time. And then it was sporadic after that. And they never didn't get paid. That never happened. The fallacies or whatever, but there was probably only once between then and the end of the season that the lads got paid on time. They never got paid when they told they were going to get paid, or they said they're going to get paid and it didn't. And it just from then on, again, the lads, they got a lot of stick from supporters, and I'll be the first one to support them, because I don't think any of them chucked the towel in. But I think from a psychological point of view, some of them lads there have relocated. Some of the lads, I know for a fact, one player and their wife had given up a job. There were 2 family income so he could come and be with Hartlepool, and then single income, and then all of a sudden that's not guaranteed, and it's not guaranteed the time, and it's not guaranteed this, and I wouldn't want to embarrass any player, and it got to the point of where a player's wife texted me and rang me and asked us, what's going on, Craig? My husband's not going to come out, or my partner's not going to come out and ask you and seem to be disruptive, but what's happening?
Yeah, it must have been a horrific sort of period to manage. But like you say, you've got a lot of people wanting you to answer questions without you being able to give them any answers. And I think that's a hard situation to be in. And then you've got to try and prepare your team for a football game as well. So you've got all the stuff a normal manager has to do, but then you've got this real uncertainty of can the players pay the mortgage? Can they put petrol in? Whatever. And it just adds to that real how hard the job is, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, without a doubt. And it just, and you've got to remember, the lads are professional footballers, but they're not getting thousands of pounds a week. They're not, it's not going to go, it's not going to go, well, okay, I'll miss 2 or 3 months, I'll be fine. It's not. You maybe miss a month or two in the career that, there's maybe 1 or 2 that had a good career that might have been in a position that could get by for 2 or 3 months. But after that, there's bills to be paid. Everyone lives to the means. If they're getting a good salary at 28, 29-year-old, they're going to have a nice car and a nice house. They're going to have a decent mortgage. They're going to have dependencies. They're going to have children that need feeding. And that's not me being dramatic. That's the facts of being at that level of football. That 1 or 2 months' wages not being paid, never mind not being paid or not being paid on time. So some of the players at that level are still younger lads who haven't financially matured, or they're living in an overdraft. They're living in, and then all of a sudden you don't get paid for another week. Then that overdraft gets bigger, or you can't pay your mortgage because that, and you get, all these things. At that level, there's probably 50-60% of people in the working life getting paid as much as what these footballers are getting paid at that level. It's a fantastic job, and it's very, very lucky. And there was probably 10% of them that are getting paid very, very well, more than the average person getting paid in the street. But there was certainly some that were getting paid what electrician gets paid in a week or a month.
It was a really strange time, because there was all these. You never knew what you could believe, who was telling what. Pam was saying one thing, and then you'd hear John Blackledge say something else, and there was no money, but we were somehow bringing in people to design a new logo and things like that. It was just, the whole thing felt mad. And I mean, by about Christmas, most of the office staff, Pam had stopped talking to them and stuff. We were like kind of just ostracised. It was such a weird time.
It went from, I think probably the October, November being really, really buoyant and really good, and everyone together and, and really making progress to then obviously not knowing we're getting paid. Like I said, I've got to back the players 100%. They might have not been good enough, which that's fair. That's fair enough. That's honest. Everyone's got their level. I've had my level as a player. I've got my level as a coach, as a manager. We've all got to accept that. That's it. But I don't think any of them chucked the towel in. It was just, I think, sometimes the difference between winning games and not winning games is the good week of training you had. And if you're not 100% tuned in to every training session, when it comes to Saturday, subconsciously, you're going to be 10, 15, 20% down. And I think looking back, they didn't come and not give it all. They didn't come and not work hard in training. But looking back now and reflection, that you could tell a quarter to half the group were there in body, but they weren't quite there in spirit.
Yeah, I mean, those players that I played with over the years, Harry, that would openly say that I'm going to try harder because I need another goal to get me bonus, or that win bonus from winning the game is important because I want to pay towards a holiday. You know what I mean? So some players have that sort of financial thing as a real something to strive for. Yeah. And if players know, well, it doesn't matter, I might not get me match appearance money, I might not get me goal bonus or clean sheet bonus. Yeah. That has an effect on you, and it has effect on, like you said, during the week as well as weekends. And I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't understand how difficult it was. And but you can imagine that from players' point of view, it is hard, and I know probably the fans were giving them stick if you want a bad run, and fans will do that. But like you say, a lot of these lads aren't earning massive money. They can't go and go to the savings and bring out money to pay for the bills, and it has a real effect on them during the week as well as on a Saturday.
No, definitely, without a shadow of doubt, and that's why I defend them, and and I'm quite happy, even though the time wasn't as good as what I'd want it to be, that I'd actually defend the players that I don't think any of them tossed it off. I think some of them didn't deal with the situation quite as well as what they could have, but unless you're put in that situation, then who's to say how you're going to deal with things? Yeah, so then it just from then on it just started to unravel, down to the comical stuff that we had no access to internet at the training ground, so you couldn't do your match analysis, couldn't download games, you couldn't watch teams. The comical situation of going down to Dagenham Redbridge, Simo, which I'm sure you remember, where we didn't have the kit because they hadn't paid the laundry bill. And the kit,
I remember that, yeah. I remember that story.
The kit, the warm-up blue Vanarama jackets, we had to borrow them off Dagenham. We had to borrow bibs off Dagenham to do the keep ball before the session. And before that, I think what I don't want to be critical on people as in personal people, but I think there was a couple of things rolled into one. Obviously, what happened was that the situation was that John pulled his money out. So I think what Palm did, thinking she was doing the best for the club, was went to the league and told them that situation, and within a week we'd had an embargo put on with, which no one knew about, which I had to keep quiet about, which I had to say nothing about until the actual window opened again in January, and we had to explain why players weren't being signed. So from possibly November till January, there was a good 6-8 weeks, and even possibly before that there was an embargo by the league that no one really knew about, even up until the last day of January, because I think we're still behind the scenes just batting it off as if we're still talking to people, so we went
fancy, weren't we? It was Jonathan Franks.
To the point of which was quite embarrassing looking back. Paul Watson sat down with Franksy and they were going over contracts about this and that, and knowing fine well that we've got an embargo.
Couldn't have signed him.
I don't know why things like that happened. I don't know. We were, the people behind the scenes were deluded that we were going to get out this embargo, but John Blackledge still was never going to put any more money in. John's
things like that, Harry, word like that gets around quickly though, doesn't it? That something like that's happened at Hartlepool, and all of a sudden everything blows up and everything's doom and gloom, and the situation, no matter how bad it might have been, gets worse and worse and worse. Of something as, well, Frankie will probably not think it's small, but a small thing like that, like pretending you're going to give someone a contract.
Yeah, but for Franks, he had a family as well. He had a family. He was, he was going, he was leaving it. If Franks was going to go to a football league club, the deadline was going to close in a week or so, and we're still, Keith Watson had to go back to St Johnson because his loan deal was up in January. We couldn't renew that. Michael Ledger, same happened there. Franksy, we couldn't renew his contract because his deal was up in January. By that time, we had to let people go, whoever was going to go. It happened before that. The Podrick Ormond went, which was a little bit of back and forth. It wasn't, but Podge didn't want to stay, so we got money from him. Nicky Devidex went because Wrexham offered money for him, so we couldn't sign any more players. So before we know it, we had like 15, 16 players that were supposed to be playing a Saturday, Tuesday, and possibly 4 or 5 of them had proven themselves they weren't good enough anyway, without being disrespectful to anyone, because we'd brought other ones in and we went on a good run. And
was it any time during that embargo era where you just felt like coming out and telling everyone, like in a press conference?
Yeah, without a doubt, because I think it's well documented. I'm not really fussed about knowing that I got quite a bit of stick near the end, and it's something that it's water off a duck's back. It hasn't bothered us one little bit. It's one of them things that football fans entitled to have their opinion, and I think I was harshly treated in some ways when you know what actually happened. But I wasn't one for pitiful stories. I wasn't one for feel sorry for me. I didn't want to say at the time. It looked as if I was making excuses. It's 2 years now since I've left Hartlepool quite happily. No one's really involved with the football club since. And in that, and then again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not naming names. I'm not shaming. I'm just saying the things that went on. Were literally were comical. About how to run a football club. We've got a chef. We've got this. We've got that. The chef didn't get paid for God knows how long. This didn't get paid for God knows how long. The last 2 or 3. Well, last 3 or 4 weeks of play, my missus come in and was cooking similar. I think you remember that for the lads' dinner because I didn't think it was right. I was going out buying food. Well, my missus was from a supermarket coming in, and if I had a double session or we had leading up to match prep, my missus was cooking the food and coming in and serving it. And
it's incredible, isn't
it? But there was, like I said, in that November when John pulled out, that was. That was the sort of defining moment because it just went downhill from then, and losing players and
that the one day that stands out for me is when we played Chester away.
Yeah.
and obviously there was a big talk of a person in town is going to take over the club and it's going to be okay. The club's going to be saved because we were on the brink. It was literally going to, that had been so badly run that it was going to collapse. And on the way to Chester, I remember getting a text off Jeff Stelling. You probably got it at the same time, Craig. Maybe, I don't know. And I was driving down, and I remember Becky picking my phone up, and I said, "Oh, see who that is." Yeah. And I just got a text off Jeff saying, "Takeover's collapsed, mate."
Yeah. Well, and
I think literally the whole car just it was just a horrible atmosphere, wasn't it?
I think at the time we were having our pre-match in the hotel. Is literally 4 miles from where I live now. Where's my home, St David's Park Hotel. And it was De Vere. We were having a pre-match there, and my Mrs. Danielle texted us and said, "Don't let the lads. Are you in a meeting? Are you trying to stop the lads from looking at their phones because this has just happened?" And then by the time I got back in after speaking to her, they were all sitting there pre-match with the phones out, talking about this has happened, that's happened, the other's happened, and it was like there was a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, wasn't there? Leading up to that, and then that was just like bang, there we go again. It was just like the rug being taken, snatched from underneath your feet, and we had to play a game 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, and we'd done all right. To be fair, we should have actually won the game.
Yeah,
we should have won the game. We drew 1-1 in the end, and there was a late equaliser, wasn't there? Where I remember rightly, we're winning 1-0, and I think Devante had a great 1-on-1. Just beforehand, keeper's made a great save, and with 7 or 8 minutes left, they've went up the other end and got the equaliser.
Yeah.
And if my mind serves us rightly, and that was and then from then on, it was just desperate measure after desperate measure. It was to the point of when we played Wrexham at the Vic, and we were out with our begging balls because if not, I think the club would have went bankrupt.
I think I was saying to Mickey earlier on as well, one of the things that, it depresses me anyway that people like yourself, and I've probably said it to you in the past, people like yourself and numerous dozens and dozens of other people have never seen Hartlepool United at its best and what Mickey saw and what he was part of. So many people in the last 6, 7 years haven't seen that side, and it depresses me. But what was worse was at the time, I remember, it was probably the lowest I've been in the whole time of me Hartlepool career, probably, was those 3 or 4 weeks where there was a big, massive divide, wasn't there, between the office side and the training ground. And I think that was sort of promoted by people within the club, which I didn't like. And I was caught in the crosshairs of that a little bit, I felt like. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think you were the only member of the coaching staff who was even talking to me, and it was such an odd. I remember having quite an uncomfortable conversation that needed to be had with you at the training ground to try and get some kind of impasse here, because it was awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was nothing short of venomous. If I was being honest, it was poisonous. It really was. It was, and even looking back now, I don't really know how it got to that situation. No. I really don't. A lot of people being underhand, a lot of people saying things that weren't true, a lot of rumour mongering, a lot of people trying to cover their own back, a lot of people trying to deflect, and that was the situation that unfortunately we found ourselves in. And it was probably the people who were getting their heads down and working as hard as what they could were affected the most, where the other people sort of just got on with it and didn't really, it didn't really affect them. It was the people that were genuinely, and I class myself in that, that I genuinely was there, obviously for my own career, of course, but, I really wanted to get this club back in the Football League, and I'd, I was the first one at the training ground, the last one away. I was the first, everything that needed to be done, I'd done, and there was no stone unturned. And it was one of them things that, with hindsight, would I have done things different? Definitely yes. But, with hindsight, I think I'd done as much as what I could. And I'd probably say half of that was taken out of my hands and things that I didn't have any control of.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
it's almost like we need to think about your Hartlepool management career, Harry, as them first few months when everything was rosy and everything was going all right, as what you could have done and what you did really well, and then the rest of it is, you said, it's out your hands, isn't it? It's uncontrollable effects on the football team, and how are you supposed to manage a team in circumstances like that? I'll never know.
Yeah, it's tough, and like I said earlier, I'm not one for making excuses. And even in that second half, if we're talking about that, the second half of it, the last 2 or 3 months, then there's still things I could have done better. There's still there's things that I was very, very fortunate at TNS to break a world record. Won 27 games in a row, and there's still things I could have done that was better, and I was still gutted that we drew 2-2. In what could I have affected in that game previously to make that game where we'd won 2-1 or 2-0. It's still stuff like that. So I've not got me head in the sand. I'm not someone that just thinks, oh, it was all someone else's fault. It wasn't. And I'm big enough and ugly enough to accept my part of the responsibility. But, I think there's got to be, and I think now's the time to make it public that there was a lot of it that was out of my hands, and all of it wasn't. I made mistakes all the way through. Every manager does, and I wouldn't duck that. But one of the biggest things was that I don't think until now, a lot of people, apart from Simo, you in there, obviously Mickey, well connected in the club, so you would have heard things. So, but what actually went on, the comical running of a big football club like that, in I think what you said as well, Simo, the head in the sand of where we were financially should have been recognised a lot quicker than what it was.
Just didn't pay the bills for like 4 months. Everything's all right.
So I'm gonna try that from tonight. I'll say how it goes.
Well, we used to say that if you tried that with your own house, you'd be living on the street very quickly. I don't understand what really was expected to happen, but then it all sort of became a bit of it just was a shitstorm, wasn't it? I mean, the key question, I guess, in the middle of it all, Craig, is do you regret leaving TNS?
No, I don't. No, I don't at all. No, I think I'm a better person, better manager, better coach, better football all-rounded now than the experience I've had at Hartlepool, and I did without a shadow of a doubt. I was... Danielle said she does. Are you not heard Danielle?
I thought she was agreeing with you there.
Yeah, she's not. She screamed in the background that she does.
I've got a feeling this would be a different podcast if Danielle was on it as well.
Yeah, I think you might be. Yeah, but no, as it wasn't a very nice experience, but you don't always have to have nice experiences to learn from it and become a better person, a better coach, a better manager. And I'm in a better position now to be more worldly wise about being football. And at TNS I was very, very fortunate to win. The odd game would get beat. If we drew, it was catastrophic. If we got beat, it was like we got beat 10-0. We had to win every week, and all the experiences with the Champions League and European football. But it was the right time. It probably, and I would like to think it was the right club for me to move. It was the right, and it was just the wrong people in charge, in wrong situation. The club was it, because, like I said, don't want to be disrespectful to the football club as it is now, and certainly not Dave, because I know Dave quite well. I don't really see the football club in a majorly different place to where it was if I had been there.
But I'll be honest, Craig, I think if you walk back into the football club now, you wouldn't recognise it from what you were dealing with then. It's like a ghost town now, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's something we've spoke about before, Sim, wasn't it? It's one of them that it's actually it made me sad the last time I went down there because of the lack of atmosphere that's in the place. And I'm not talking about a match day. I just mean in the background of the offices, and it's just nothing. There's nothing there anymore, and it is terribly sad.
Yeah, I think the biggest, we're talking about regrets and so on and so forth. The biggest thing, I think, the biggest guilt I've still got and I still deal with on a daily basis, probably not daily now, but I still feel really terrible for Danielle and for Ruby, because I signed a 3-year contract, and I was told I know football's football. I was told in the meeting from John Blackledge that you're going to have to move your family. I would have anyway, but you're going to have to move your family. You're going to have to move a 5-year-old girl out of her first year of primary school. You're going to have to move your wife, who's got a successful business, to really, really throw yourself into it. And I would have anyway. We would have.
Yeah.
That's how we are. And then to be told in November, possibly 6-7 months later, that I'm not even going to pay your wages or pay anyone else's wages or pay another bill, and I've got no accountability from that, it's something that I do regret. And I've still now got a bitter taste, and I still feel quite angry about it, because we stayed up there the full year to see the school year out, and it was probably one of the saddest days of my parenting life, leaving that school that a 6-7-year-old had gone to, and forged really good relationships with teachers and friends, and uncontrollably sobbing on our last day coming out of a school and trying to. I know it happens. We don't live in a world of rainbows and unicorns, but that's the only. I'm a big boy. I can look after myself to a certain extent. Danielle's a big girl. She can look after herself. So we get on with it. And kids are resilient. I know that, but that's one thing I'd never ever forgive the powers that be.
Yeah.
I don't think that was called for, the situation that happened.
I mean, even the way it ended, Craig. My understanding of the situation is since that it was someone who wasn't even employed by the football club that was driving Pam to sack you. You know
right.
What I mean? Who then went on to become part of the football club as the next chief executive. Who was behind that decision. He talked about it all the time when he was chief executive.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's right either.
Yeah, the other thing as well, I've got I don't really want to name names, but there's a someone that works for a newspaper up in the northeast that told me I was getting sacked that day.
Mm-hmm.
So they rang me first thing in the morning. It was the day after Halifax. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, this is a bit strange, getting a phone call off who it was. It was someone who didn't cover the papers at that time in the area, but someone who I had a good relationship with, and said, just to give you the heads up, Craig, that they're going to meet you at the club today and they're going to sack you. And it won't even be the owner, and it won't even be the chair lady. So Paul Watson rang me, and then We had a conversation. We met at Durham. We had a conversation, and I made it as uncomfortable as possible because I wanted Pam to tell us, you know, even to the point of she made so many excuses, and, you know, to the point of said, fine, I'm at home, come to my home, come and tell me at home. You know, by this time, I think Paul wasn't even working at the club, was he, Simo, by that time?
Just the timeline, probably not. No, I think he'd stepped aside, hadn't he?
Yeah, so...
Because I think it'd become clear that the club didn't need a head of recruitment when they were under a transfer embargo.
Yeah, that's a good giveaway, isn't it? It's a good, yeah. So yeah, and you know, and it was just, I just think, you know, come on, you know, if it's going to look, we're in the industry, you know, God knows how many sackings you see, Simo. Mickey, you've been a footballer a long time.
To be honest, it was one of my, when I got sacked by Hartlepool, it was one of the things that pissed me off more than anything else. That Russ was the chief executive at the time, and Maureen in the office rang me up and told me that I was getting sacked.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Russ about it, and I said, Russ, why didn't you just meet us for a coffee and tell us? Like I just want. My biggest thing was I didn't think it was fair on Maureen. Maureen's on the phone, was crying her eyes out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Maureen, it's not your fault. You haven't made this decision. But I would like to have heard it from the people that have actually made the decision. So then you can look them in the eyes and say, yeah, okay. And it was the right time for me to leave. And I would have said that to Russ, but I wanted him to tell me. I didn't want Maureen to be put in that situation. And like you said, you want the person that's made the decision or been involved in that decision to tell you face to face.
Because as well, after I've been sacked, I spoke to John Blackledge, and John didn't know anything about it. And at the time, he was still the official owner of the football club.
Yeah, well, I mean,
just seems to sum it up. That
the stuff about being leaked to the press and stuff. I remember don't know if you remember that redundancy meeting that we had.
Yeah.
At the ground, and I'd been told, presumably from a similar source to the one you had, 2 hours before the meeting, I got a phone call saying, "Oh, you're going to be all pulled into a meeting and told there's going to be a restructure and there'll be redundancies."
Yeah.
But Paul Watson had told the journalist in question before the staff had got to know that their jobs were at risk. And that was the way the football club was run at the time.
I think that was when we look at, you know, the poisonous atmosphere. I think that was, you know, looking back, when things like that are happening, I don't think there's going to be any other way. We're all human beings. We've all got feelings. We're all, you know, in a football club, you've got, you know, feisty people. You've got people like Simo, who's been at the football club for a hell of a long time. You've got footballers that are high maintenance. You've got managers and coaches that are doing a job. It's a recipe for disaster looking back now. When you're saying about all these things that happened, you know, and there's other things that I heard from other members of staff when I moved on about other people stabbing me in the back and so on and so forth. And, you know, I'm not going to go into that. What goes around comes around, you know, but it was real. It was like a pit of sort of venomous vipers. You know, you didn't know who to believe. You didn't know who was telling the truth. You didn't know how to turn your back on anybody, you know, and it just created a really, really poor atmosphere. And it was the people that weren't caught up in the circle that probably were the ones that were driving it, which was strange.
Well, Craig, thanks very much indeed for joining us. It's been really insightful, the stuff, you know, not just about Hartlepool, but about your career across the sort of scope of it. Thanks very much for sharing that with us.
Nah, no problem. Like I said, you know, I don't regret it, and it's a fantastic football club, you know, run in the right manner, you know, in a big football club, and I wish them all the best in the future.